Have you ever said yes when everything in you wanted to say no? But you said yes because you didn't want to feel guilty and you didn't want to disappoint the other person, because you thought it would be easier to keep the peace. I know that feeling, and I know how you can slowly lose yourself to focusing on others and often at the expense of your own well-being. Today I want to talk about what happens when you start saying no without over-explaining, without having to be wrought with guilt, and how it's often, and maybe always, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others that you care about. I used to be the queen of saying yes. Yes, when people needed my support. Yes, when people wanted to do something with me. Yes to all of the, favors, plans, and it isn't that a part of me didn't want to do, and say the yes. But what I wasn't doing was checking in with myself. Did I have the energy? Did I even have the desire to do this thing that I was automatically saying yes to? And why did I do that? For a while, I wasn't even conscious of why. It was just my default. I, in my childhood, just was always, that empathic, caring, really good, supportive friend. Then as I became more aware and in tune and asking myself questions and reflecting on why I was doing it, I didn't want people to think I was selfish. I was worried people wouldn't like me, that they would be disappointed and upset with me if I said no. And the other thing was that I prided myself on someone that people could rely on. So if I started saying no, particularly when people needed help, I would just have so many fears, worries, and feelings of guilt about what would happen if I did start to say no. If I did say no, it did come with, excuses and reasons and sometimes even apologies. But here's what I didn't realize. Every time I said yes without checking into myself to check in with how I was feeling and what I truly wanted, I was abandoning myself. And the cost was high. Resentment, exhaustion, disconnection from myself. And when I would say the yes to people, when I was in that state of exhaustion, for example, I wasn't really fully there with the authentic, full presence of myself, and people could tell. Often when I'm tired, I'm more quiet. So then people would end up asking what's wrong, So it kind of would backfire on me as well. So then I began the shift. I started small. I started to just tune into what I was feeling and needing and wanting when someone would reach out. And it might just be a phone call from someone. I just took some space to discern phone's ringing or someone's texting me wanting to talk. And I would ask myself, how do I feel right now? Do I have the energy? And really, it doesn't even have to be a lengthy check-in. I just had a knowing. If I'm tired, I know I'm tired. And so I just started by not really saying, no, I don't want to talk to you right now. I would just, not respond, give myself some time. And then I would either just call back when I felt like I had the energy, or I would text and say, hey, I'm just, I'm not available tonight. Or, with really close friends, I can say, you know what, I'm pretty tired tonight. I can get a hold of you soon, kind of a thing. And not overpromise that I'm going to be there for everybody all the time. Because I did find, and maybe a lot of you can relate, when people come to rely on you, if you're their person, and when they're struggling, that's the first phone call, kind of a thing, then it can be very taxing and very draining. What I started to notice when I was making the shift, there were some things that didn't happen that I was worried that would happen, and then some relationships that didn't sustain the changes that I was making. And I'll talk about both because it does feed into the challenges of why we do keep saying yes. So the first thing was, most of the friends that I have had for a long time, not all of which are in my life now, but for the most part, they weren't like mean or nasty and didn't express hurt and things like that when I wasn't available. It was more either no response or a quiet kind of thing. And no response can be challenging, right? Because those of us who worry about what others think and feel about us, we're like, uh-oh, are they mad at me? And all of those things. And oh, have I let them down? And so, but there are subtler ways to do it. There's more direct ways to do it. The other piece too is in close friendships or even in family relationships, we can just also let people know, like, hey, sometimes like you just may not always readily get a hold of me because I'm not always going to be available. I'm going to tune into myself. But most people don't want to be that direct, right? It can feel very like scary, confrontative, and unnatural or whatever. And I just love to throw out ideas, different things that have worked for me or different things that have helped my clients, because I'm helping my clients navigate these things all the time. A common theme amongst pretty much every one of my clients is this feeling, the belief, and the default of I need to be available. I'll let people down, and we'll do it, like I said earlier, to the point of exhaustion and burnout, and then even like anger and resentment, because we can start to feel like, well, I'm giving and giving and others are not doing that for me. But it's interesting when we start to blame or like look at others, and then it kind of fuels the resentment. But when we really take ownership of it, like I can speak for myself, I created the dynamic where if someone would ask how I'm doing, I would immediately shift to them. Because it just, that part of me that was holding that default, that would feel guilty or just like that other people were more important, that a main part of my identity was to always be there and be listening to them before myself, even, before me even expressing my like feelings and what was going on. So when we're in that mode, we don't give ourselves the space. So it's something that we don't have to change. I usually tell my clients, and what works best for me is baby steps that feel tolerable and manageable. Because if the feelings that are going to come in regard to saying no, like the guilt, for example, guilt can really hit us really, really hard. It can be overwhelming so much that we just avoid it without moving any closer to considering other options. So when our emotions are kind of running things, we have parts of us that want to protect us from that distress, that emotional pain, and all of that. So when we start saying no and realize, if it comes into our experience, that the worst didn't happen, the world didn't end, it wasn't catastrophic, didn't have meltdowns and explosive responses from other people. So we could be like, phew, okay, getting our feet wet and doing that. But what happens when someone does get upset? That's the moment we would love to take it back. And maybe we do. Maybe we start apologizing and backtracking and saying, okay, we want to smooth it over. We want to not have them think we're not a good friend. We might second guess our decision to focus on our own feelings and needs, feeling like we're being harsh. And then that whole I'm being selfish thing comes in. And that's the part of us that has the doubt, that has the desire to be accepted, loved, liked, all of those things. But that's just a part of us. But that's also the part of us that's been running this whole pattern and is contributing to why we got frustrated, fed up, burned out, and exhausted, that led us to where we are. So we can have a knowing this needs to change, right? We're fed up. We don't want to keep doing things the way we are. But then you get that reaction from somebody and it kind of can stop you in your tracks. Here's the truth. Their reaction does not mean you've done anything wrong. Tune into what you believe or feel about that. So many of us that are more sensitive, empathic, goes all along with we're so compassionate, we're so caring, we want to be there for everybody. So if someone has a reaction and they're upset with us because we've said no to something, we can immediately assume their perspective is right. But what I have found helpful and so freeing is to come to, now I know I am more important than anything or anyone. Now, when it comes to my daughter, that's all. So, there's always caveats, and I'm not trying to encourage absolutes. But now, it's like I would ask myself questions like, why would their perspective and feelings be more true than mine? If you ask yourself that, do you have an answer? I would have like silence. Like my parts would be like, I can't come up with a good reason. It's just always been that way for me since childhood. Because those of us who are more sensitive and empathic, it's like we're born this way. Some things can amplify that up and things like that, but we just have maybe some natural temperament to us. And so I would learn to not just automatically default to, okay, I'm sorry, oops, all that kind of stuff. And when you start to believe that, it doesn't work to just at the thought level try to talk yourself into it. I love to guide people and experience this myself where I'm connecting with the part that has the doubt, that has the fear, that is prioritizing other people first. And all because like there's a why. There's always a why about that pattern and that part. And when it's, I want to be liked, I want to be loved, I want to avoid abandonment. Making decisions from fear at any time is not for our highest good. However, that part of us is trying to help us. And this is the difference between getting set in your mind with your beliefs, and even as the belief can shift from different parts of you, but the part with the doubt isn't changing its belief. It needs to be seen and loved and maybe healed by you, but it's looking for it on the outside because it never knew that our true self was here. That's meant to be the leader of this beautiful system. If we can get on board with saying no doesn't mean we did something wrong. The other person is having some kind of reaction and they're not happy with us. So what else can we do? We can hold the boundary with love. Because what if also it's the best for them? And specifically, like I was saying earlier, if you're not in a good mood, energy to really be that good friend or supporter, showing up and being there anyway, we're not showing up with the best of all that we are. And they're going to feel it. So we can push through, but they can sense. Some of us maybe get really good at faking it. I think I did until for a long time, people probably couldn't tell, that I might have been like tired or whatever it might be. But eventually when I was really burned out, then I couldn't hide it. And it was kind of cool because part of me didn't want to hide it anymore. The other aspect of this is that feeling feelings, even when they're feelings of hurt and disappointment, it's not a bad thing. When we can come to know we are meant to feel feelings. We're having a human experience. We have a physical body. We have parts of us that are on a journey. And instead of, oh no, they're upset, I have to fix it, I have to stop it, which is what often most of us, myself, my clients, friends, most people are trying to avoid those situations. And it can feel very challenging and confrontative. So what I find really helps is working from the inside out. And what I mean by that is when we work with our parts, coming in with love and compassion, letting go of judgment, really listening to their concerns, then when they are more seen by our higher self and they feel loved, what's going on with people on the outside, the concern about that diminishes and can even clear. Because if it's natural and healthy to feel emotions, then we can let ourselves feel them, we can let the other people feel them, And when people rely on us so much so that when we're not available, they're not okay, that, for me, that was a really big burden. And I don't believe that that empowers anyone. I can't make other people feel better. It's when we own and take responsibility for ourself and our well-being. It doesn't mean that doesn't involve reaching out to other people. But what happens is we're just we're avoiding wanting to be alone with our feelings for a lot of reasons. So then, and I used to do this. I used to, when my mom was alive, I would call her and my best friend and stuff and talk about this thing. And I never really felt my feelings. I was in my head about it. I, of course, wanted them to take my side, right? I wanted to get validation I was right. And when I realized that, and instead of letting that be the motivator and focus of my behavior in reaching out to another person to get compassion and support, now I make time to be with my feelings, to see all of these parts of me that are in distress, worry, anxiety, fear, whatever it is. Then once I've done that, I will connect with another person. Now, there are times where, and I'm not saying it's wrong to go to other people immediately. It's not about getting it wrong. It's just what's going to help us be in more harmony. And, overall and long term. And, for a lot of us, that's a lifetime journey. It's not like, oh, you should go from this to this and just stop reaching out to people. I am definitely not saying that. I like to share things and bring awareness relative to my experience, relative to lovely clients that I work with. And there are noticeable shifts over time in people when we begin to shift into more balanced types of perspectives about that we matter, our own feelings matter, that it doesn't work to even rely on getting validated and supported by another person because there's no guarantee that they'll be there. And I'm not saying that to bring in a negativity, right, or a dismal thing here. We would like to have people in our life, and it's not about, oh, I should just get so grounded and loving of myself that I don't need anyone. And maybe it's not about needing, but about wanting and desiring to have connected relationships, but not because we can't live without them in our life. With regard to how saying no helps us honor and get more deeply connected with ourselves, we are literally, every time we say no, when we really don't want to do something, we are reclaiming our own energy, our peace, our voice, our time, being conscious of what we choose to put our energy into, our time into, based on the parts of us, the body, how's it feeling, what do our parts need from us, instead of leaving them behind to be there for other people. For me now, this just feels like coming home. Some of the changes that I notice in myself and my clients is more acceptance of what is going on, right now. I have shifted out of expectations on my husband or friends, that internally I had this image of how I wanted some of these people in my life to be in relation to being there for me, or else I didn't feel soothed or comforted or confident. And through a lot of reflection and connecting and all these things, I've come to realize I can be with my feelings. I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. Now, I still have parts that don't believe all that. But when more and more of our very wise parts that have so much of the beautiful self-energy, because self-energy is only compassionate, curious, caring, loving. It doesn't have judgment. It's a essence of all that we are. And we can't experience this essence of us, this consciousness, if we're in our head worrying about what is this other person going to think about me? And oh no, they're upset with me and I have to fix it. So if this is where you're at, trying to find your voice, trying to say no without spiraling, I want you to know you're not wrong. You're waking up. You're waking up to all that you are. You're waking up to an expanded awareness that you matter, that you deserve to experience everything you'd like to experience, which means a lot of times prioritizing yourself and your feelings first. And that's worth everything. If this resonated with you and you'd like some more help with this, I invite you to email me, or you can book a session at my link in the description and help you find the peace that you so would like to experience in your life.